Welcome friends to another rSlash video. If you want to be that one standout person today, all you have to do is hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by PG Liberal, Apparently You're Dead. I used to work for AAFES, think Walmart but on US military bases, and I worked at the customer service counter where people would come to do various things, such as pay their store credit card bill. During this time, the casualties coming in from Iraq/Afghanistan were pretty constant, and shortly prior to this interaction, I got briefed on what it meant if I saw the deceased card. I got the feeling we had several customers who died in Iraq, and the policy was put in place as AAFES likely didn't want the bad PR and trying to collect debt from widows, which, is a good idea. It meant the card was closed, all debt was written off, and all automatic payments were canceled. Well, if you've ever worked or dealt with AAFES, you understand they're incredibly incompetent. Well, one day, I'm working and a woman comes up to me and says, "I'm Mrs. Jackson. I would like to make a payment on my Star card." I said, "That's fine. Can I see your ID or Star card?" She gave me her Star card and I asked, "And how much will you be paying today?" To which she said, $1,500. I opened her account and in big bright red letters, her account status was deceased. Her balances were zeroed out. Confused, I asked her how much she owed on the account. She said approximately $4,000. Thinking maybe I opened the wrong account, I asked her if she had her Star card so I could enter the exact account number. She gave me her Star card. Same status, she's dead. She owes us no more money. And I said, "Miss Jackson, I have good news and bad news," to which she gave me a frustrated look and said, "What's the bad news?" I said, "Apparently you're dead." She laughs and says, "I feel very much alive." I nod my head and go, "I agree, you do appear to be alive." So she goes, "So what's the good news?" I smile and say, "You don't owe us any more money." She goes, "What?" I say, "Per our policy, if a customer dies, we close their account and write off their debt." Concerned, she goes, "Well, is this going to get sent to collections?" I ask, "Were you past due?" She says, "No, I wasn't." I say, "Let me call my manager." So I call my manager and I ask my manager, if a customer is declared deceased, do we send their debt to a collection agency? He goes, "No, it's written off." So I relay that information. She starts to smile and then she goes, "So can I use my Star card?" I say, "No, it's been closed, but if you want to open another account, you can." So we opened another account. Yes, it worked and she was approved. I dealt with Mrs. Jackson several times over the next year, as she liked to come in person and make the payment. I nicknamed her Zombie, a nickname which she embraced. When she would approach me, I would go, "Ah, the zombie's back." And she would smile and joke, "Be nice or I'll eat you." We kept it as an inside joke. My coworkers were always confused. I'm just imagining OP looking at the computer, seeing big red deceased letters, looking back up and like, "Oh my god, are you a ghost?" Be honest, if you were working here and somebody ended up being marked as deceased incorrectly, would you let them get away with it and open a new account, or would you report it to the manager? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Vossmania, You're the Boss. This happened to a friend of mine around a decade ago, and despite her not being on Reddit, I thought it should be shared. She was working the bar at a small bar/bistro kind of place, and her boss had recently hired a new employee that was a friend of his. First week, she was kind of humble and didn't really make any impressions besides being a bit slow and sloppy when it came to serving tables. My friend was the one who got to use the company car to pick up the morning newspapers, but she could also use it for personal matters however she saw fit. That didn't really sit well with the new employee because she felt entitled to the car and all the perks that came with it. One day, out of the blue, she started to boss my friend around, sending her to do odd jobs, help out in the kitchen, whatever. My friend knew that she was friends with the boss, and since she didn't want any drama, she complied with every request. So off to the kitchen she went, leaving the front of the house entirely to Mrs. "I'm friends with the boss." The place quickly filled up with people during lunchtime, and as you would expect, she couldn't handle the job or the pressure even a little bit. She was in the weeds right from the start. The place was a mess, floors covered in trash, tables not being served, the bar was full of dirty dishes, and so on. Because of all that, she wasn't answering the phone in the bar when the boss was calling. So he came to check what's happening, and as you would expect, he was furious. He was yelling at my friend, asking her why she was in the kitchen and not working front of house, and how everything was a complete disaster. She told him honestly that if his friend wants to be in charge and boss her around, she'll comply because she'll automatically lose every argument based on their personal relationship, and finished off with, "I'll quit today. I don't need this crap." She didn't leave immediately after that and stayed for a coffee. The boss had calmed down at that point and said that even if she quit, the coffee was on the house and whatnot, and stayed to chat with her, and they were actually having quite a few laughs and a good time. Miss Entitled saw all that and thought the boss sided with my friend in that situation because they were still chummy. She walked up to the boss and said that she will not keep working for him as long as my friend is still there, not knowing that my friend quit 10 minutes ago, and added some profanities to spice things up. The boss just gave her the coldest look possible and pointed her to the door. My friend kept working there for another good few years. Man, I'm sure it was a difficult decision when the owner found out how awful the place was run by their friend and how awful OP's friend was being treated by them. Just so hard to see that snotty, awful at their job friend walk out the door. Guess OP's friend will just have to keep holding it down for a few more years. This next story is by username 614-855-713, Eat Fresher. This one happened a few years ago when I worked in corporate for a large sub-chain that had currently seen better days. They'd purchased a taco concept, and part of my job consisted of going around the country to help open up these new restaurants. Now, the sub-chain is not known for corporate luxuries, so I didn't bat an eye at the daily food expense allowance when traveling, which was $42 per day broken out by meal. $8 for breakfast, $14 for lunch, $20 for dinner. You couldn't even scrimp on breakfast and lunch to get yourself an alright meal. But okay, I usually stayed in hotels that had a complimentary breakfast buffet, and I often skipped lunch and worked straight through the day, so my expenses were regularly less than $20 per day. Now the problem comes when during one of these trips when my dinner came out to be $20.05. Before a cash tip, mind you, that I paid out of my own pocket and didn't expense. I didn't think much of it because, hey, it's a nickel and I didn't go over my daily spending allotment. Cut to the end of the month after submitting my expense report, I get a call from accounting that went like this. Accountant says, "I'm looking at your July expenses. How did you want to handle this?" I say, I did handle it. I submitted. They say, "No, you went over on one of your dinners. Would you like to send in payment or have it taken from your payroll?" I say, "I'm sorry, what total are you talking about?" Accountant says, "You spent $20.05 on dinner XYZ, which is a 5-cent overage." Silence. I say, "Okay, so I owe 5 cents?" The accountant says, "Yes." I say, "You can take that out of my payroll, but please do it over the next 5 pay periods. I'd like to split up the payments for budgeting purposes." They ask, "Are you serious?" And I ask, "Are you?" Following her true nature, she took a penny out of the next 5 checks. And I made a point of spending as close to $42 a day as humanly possible for every other trip I ever took with that company. You're going to literally nickel and dime your employees over 5 cents? I would do the same thing as OP after that. I'm going to use up every single bit of that $42 that I have. Our next story is by JC12345678909. I'm sending you where you belong, if you say so. For one of my class periods, I'm an office aide, meaning I help counselors, front office, APs, etc. do tasks. Depending on where one is stationed in the school, they have different tasks. Some do textbook organization, some give slips to students in class to talk to certain school officials, etc. This one day, I was assigned with giving schedule changes to students. It's the start of the school year and we have 800 plus kids, so there's lots of schedule mistakes, dropped classes, and constant moving around. After I make my round going classroom to classroom handing new schedules, I'm now empty-handed and returning back upstairs to where I was stationed. But before I get there, I run into a teacher I've had problems with. Nothing too bad, but the link between us wasn't the best. They were standing in the hallway, probably on watch in case students skip class, and they stopped me. Teacher says, "Hey OP, what do you think you're doing skipping class?" I say, no, I was just going back." "Save it. I'm sending you where you belong at, the room I'm stationed at." I say, "Alright." So we walk together to the room and then they start saying, "I found this kid skipping class," and other things that were very much false. When the adults saw who the teacher was talking about, yours truly, they all said, "No, OP is office 8 and stationed here. We had him distribute new schedules." The teacher went silent and face went blank and a bit pale. They looked at the other adults, then to me. I gave a nice smile, and then they left the room, defeated. You gotta love when an angry, strict teacher makes an absolute fool of themselves and there's nothing they can do but just take it. Pure egg on the face. Our next story is by Jean DePierre. I can't have a pay raise, but my work trip hotel bills are paid for? Okay. My first proper job was around 1990 in London, which is famously one of the more expensive cities in the world. My salary was around £1,000 a month. Easy to remember. I don't know what the national or London average salary for a young graduate was back then, but I was definitely earning at the low end of the pay spectrum, especially because it was work that required some quite specialist skills and a lot of discretion. I can't give details without the risk of making myself identifiable, but let's just say that the organization was owned by one of the wealthiest men in England, and my task was politically sensitive as I had access to private information about some very famous public people. The pay was bad, but I enjoyed the work, and one of its big perks was that I had to go to Paris for about 1 week each month. While I was there, my hotel was paid for automatically, and meals were reimbursed when I submitted receipts. Anyway, after several months, I felt that I'd proven myself to be hardworking, competent, reliable, discreet, etc. So I asked for a raise, explaining that I was finding it hard living in London on the salary. They couldn't fault my work, but they brushed me off with vague suggestions that maybe we could revisit the question of pay at some unspecified later date. At this time, the place I was living in didn't have a washing machine, which was fine with me, as I didn't want to spend a portion of my meager income on buying one, plus there was a laundrette very close by. And I enjoyed reading the newspapers each Sunday morning while my clothes went round and round in soapy circles. Once or twice though, I had to go to Paris late in the week when I didn't have a lot of clean clothes, so I'd take what clean items I had and get some socks and underwear cleaned by the hotel laundry service after I'd worn them. It soon dawned on my bosses that they never queried the extra expense of laundry. Maybe the hotel just billed them for the total amount of each of my visits without itemizing the details? I don't know, I didn't ask. Cue the malicious compliance. Apparently I couldn't have a pay increase, but I could get laundry done at the hotel in Paris. Okay. For the rest of the time I worked in that job, I used to save up all of my dirty clothes, including shirts, trousers, etc., and take it with me from London to Paris to have it laundered there. I felt a bit bad about this because hotels always charge exorbitant prices for the service. Cleaning my socks and underwear was maybe costing an extra £20 each trip I made, but I was saving myself 2 pence at the laundrette. There was never any fallout as such for the laundry issue. After a year, I told them that I'd been offered a paid internship in the USA, and they said they would increase my salary if I stayed working for them in London, but I took great pleasure in telling them that their offer was too little, too late, and that I wasn't interested. As bad as OP may have felt, they were just trying to get by with what they had, while not blowing as much money as possible. If they didn't care or they didn't ask about the laundry prices and whatnot and your Paris stays, in my opinion, keep on doing what you gotta do to get those clean clothes. In fact, if anything, I have a lot more respect for OP packing everything and taking it with them from London to Paris to get their clothes laundered. Like, that's a lot of effort. And our final story of the day is by BS13690. Clean out this drawer? No problem. So this happened many years ago in the United States Marine Corps. My buddy, who was a private first class, having been busted down for bouncing checks, was told by the chief warrant officer of the Marines Administrative Support to clean out this drawer, it's a mess. The drawer was full of old travel files that, according to policy, were to be kept for a couple of years. Many times the chief warrant officer had given us lectures on taking his orders literally and not to question them, which is what my buddy decided to do. He threw all the files in the trash. When inspection time came around a few months later, and he was asked where all the old travel files were, he answered, "I was told to clean out that drawer, which I did." The chief warrant officer went into his office and didn't leave for 2 hours. I know the kind of behavior the chief warrant officer expresses here is probably good for the long-term stability of the Marines, but whenever you hear of an authoritative figure like this being like, "Clean out that drawer, it's a mess," you can't help but just feel some type of way about it for some reason. Also, thank the Lord for the people who explained what the acronyms meant. I would have been lost. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.